I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful tune. Love to hear it every time I play it. It keeps me inspired. Welcome to my co-host, my colleague and friend, Diana Hawkins, and Andrew. Andrew, how you doing, man?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. On Monday, we try to connect with people that are interested in the public and civic life. And for the past several weeks, we've been talking to candidates city council and one candidate for mayor will be doing more. Our goal is to keep this conversation going right up into and through the general election in November. Pleased to have Mickey Moore. He's been fairly regular in joining the program. And Mickey, before I have you just lay out again your value proposition, why you want voters in Ward 9 to send you to city council, let me ask Diana and Andrew to if you have any particular items you want to bring up about what's happening in the neighborhood in Hawthorne in particular. Diana, do you have anything?
Well, we are getting ready to start collecting coats for our winter warmth drive. I'm going to be sending out a flyer by the end of this week, and we're going to collect coats and then give them away again the week before Thanksgiving. And the other thing is, I want to make sure that everybody join us this Thursday for the Hawthorne Huddle because we have two great organizations, Twin Cities Rise and Neon. They're going to join us and tell us about the most wonderful and exciting programs that they have. And Al, I have to share something with you guys. Um, Friday, something happened, and most of you guys don't know this, but this here smoke and haze had me really, really, really bad.
Mm.
About 4 days, I could not talk. And so I just want you guys to know that I have a dynamite staff person, Mr. Andrew Barnhoff. And I have to show you guys this, and I hope everybody can see this. He-Man presented me in Hawthorne with this award on Friday, and I couldn't talk. And Andrew was nice enough to stand in. Okay, we look just alike, right?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. I had to make that
Of course.
publicly, and I had to thank Clarence and He-Man for giving me this award.
Well,
Thank
Clarence
you,
is
Diana.
here. Clarence, good to see you again. The Human Organization. And Clarence, thank you for all you've been doing, your partnership with Hawthorne Neighborhood and University of Minnesota. And now, pleased to welcome and acknowledge you as a partner of conversations with Al McFarlane. And, it's really a formality because we've been in partnership for a long time over the years and years, but it's great to take it to another level. And so, thanks to Diana and Andrew and our relationship and the other places we touch, we are taking this up to another level, and we're pleased to be able to do that. Andrew, any comments or thoughts? Thank you for standing in for Diana. She commended you, and I know that that comment was well deserved because you really hold it down for the entire community. So I want
Well,
to
I
second what Diana said in giving you praise and props. And I speak from my position as the editor of Insight, but also on behalf of the entire community.
well, thank you for that. I'm not very good at taking compliments. It's not something I was raised to do well. But no, working for Diana, you can't help but learn how to take care of the community and understand the importance of it. And I'm just honored to know all of you and to work towards to positive solutions and work towards justice for our community. It's an honor to know and work for each one of you, and definitely an honor to know and become good friends with Diana and have such a wonderful person to share these experiences with.
Great, great, great. And Brother Clarence, any what's on your agenda right now at Human? What are the projects that you have on the table right now for the community?
Well, thank you for that, Al. I actually came here just to listen today. Thank you, though, for the opportunity. But we are definitely working to create, actually, when I have a brochure out, we talk about substance abuse and pregnancy. We want to make sure that we are protecting our children and we're protecting our families. We're really concerned about that. The other thing that we are doing again is having an opioid and COVID-19 survey. We're going to be doing a lot of things in the community. Once again, it's my honor to be able to work with you. I mean, we've talked for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And we have never ever been formal in our relationship.
Right.
And it's time. You know what I mean? I think that, you know me. I know a lot about you. I know a lot about Diana and Hawthorne and what you're trying to do. And I'm very serious about this. And I just thank you for the opportunity. Really, I do. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm being honest as I can be. But we're going to be doing a lot of stuff in Hawthorne.
Yeah.
And the community is going to drive this. And that's the whole thing. And Mickey, I'd love to work with you too. And I know you, Mickey. I know you know those DVDs, man. I know you. Yeah, so
everybody knows me.
Yeah. Okay, so we're good. But yeah, Ninth Ward as well. But we want to really be good partners. That's basically all I want to say.
Great. Well, I wanted to start with you, Mickey, but I see we got a show stealer here. Tekken was really smart. Tekken looks like he brought a boss with him, right? And the bosses always steal the show. Tekken, good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning. I got my two godchildren with me. In from Brooklyn, and say hi. And so I'm.
Oh, two of them.
And so I'm on baby duty and doing this.
Well, beautiful babies, man. And it's a good thing. When I started Insight, almost 30, 40 years ago, one of the things I did was went to Hawthorne neighborhood and Jordan neighborhood and NERC. And it was usually me and my wife, Bobby, and my two daughters, going to the meeting, because I had to ask each of the organizations to underwrite advertising contracts that we ended up using to launch our business, right? That's how we got Insight started, because I had no money. I had a great idea. I had published Insight for a year as a magazine owned by the company that I worked for, a company called Graphic Services in Northeast Minneapolis, but they owned the publication. I had the privilege of starting it, them letting me start it and run it. But after a year, I wanted to buy it and own it. And to do that, I had to raise the money to do it. And the way I raised the money went to Hawthorne neighborhood, Jordan area neighborhood, Willard Homewood, and Northside Residents Redevelopment Council, and made presentations about, where I lived in North Minneapolis. I live right now where I lived then. I'm in the same place where I started. And but that I was a new family man and had my family with me. And I was extremely conscious that as I was standing in these meetings, holding up my two daughters, just like you holding your two godchildren, it's a powerful image. And Andrew knows the value, because every now and then he has his boss on the screen as well.
And just to say,
I call the kids bosses, okay?
That's right. I don't know how long I'll be able to sit with you, but I thought it was kind of apropos, because this is what we're fighting for.
Absolutely.
This is what we should be fighting for. I was telling their father that I'm in this race to assure that in 20 years, they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
They're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, hang on as long as you can and jump in. And what I wanted to do today was actually give you and Mickey, starting with Mickey, a chance to do a reset. Always good to bring people back up to date, Mickey. Let's act like this is our first interview again and introduce you, because there'll be people listening today who hadn't heard, the background that you shared before. So let's bring everybody to Mickey Moore 101, who you are, where you're from, kind of what informed your growing into the adult and resident and entrepreneur that you became, and then why that led to the decision that you are undertaking right now, and that is seeking election to the Minneapolis City Council, representing Ward 9 in South Minneapolis. So Mickey, the microphone is yours.
Well, thanks so much, Al. It's always great to be here. Let me tell everybody, my name is Mickey Moore. I'm born and raised in South Minneapolis. I've lived here all my life, and I've had the privilege to open and run several very successful small businesses, not just in South Minneapolis, but actually all over the Twin Cities. One of them was called the Braid Factory, which we opened in 1996, and it has remained the Twin Cities' most popular natural hair braiding location. In fact, we started the professional natural hair care industry. Prior to the Braid Factory opening up, there were no natural hair care salons available for our city, for our clients, for our customer base. If you wanted to get braids or cornrows or natural hair styles of any kind, you basically had to know somebody, and you had to either go to their house or have them come to their house. There were even a few operations that were located like in the supply room of beauty supply stores. Essentially, this viable and vibrant industry had been relegated to the back rooms and the porches, and it wasn't on accident. This was a purposeful tactic by the state of Minnesota. When I opened up the Braid Factory, the state of Minnesota tried to close me down. They issued cease and desist orders, temporary restraining orders. They even put me in jail for about 45 days for braiding hair. And it's this kind of disconnect between what we need, what we deserve, and what our government is giving us that I really want to try to rectify. So after decades of successful accomplishments on the business front and a deep and intimate connection with our community by just getting to know everybody through all of my businesses, whether they are staff, employees, or clients, we just recently surpassed 300,000 clients at the Braid Factory. It's really an incredible feat when you think about the longevity and the depth of support that we've been so fortunate to get from our community. Going back to last summer, when we all witnessed that tragic murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer, right, 8 blocks away from my South Minneapolis hair braiding location, right there on TV and Facebook for the world to see. It was jarring. It forced a lot of issues to really immediately come to the surface. And I felt compelled because I understand this community so well, and I've lived here all my life. And I just knew that the lack of leadership within our city government structure was not going to properly handle this. If our own history is any clue or any evidence, we weren't going to handle this newest situation any better than we handled any of the last situations. So I really felt compelled to lend myself as a voice to that group of people who were going to be dissatisfied, frustrated, upset, disgusted, you name the adjective. And I just wanted them to know that somebody was willing to struggle with them to accomplish what they needed and understood what they needed. And that's where I have come in. Last summer, I ran as a United States congressional candidate, but that quickly turned over into a run for city council in the 9th Ward when we found out that the 9th Ward city councilwoman wasn't going to seek re-election. So this was a perfect opportunity. The 9th Ward is where I've had a lot of businesses. It's where I've been really centered for the last 38 years of my life. And I care deeply about the people, the communities, and the neighborhoods in the 9th Ward. It's interesting, Diana brings up her award, which she so richly deserves. And people sometimes don't catch on that this city is special. And we have this fundamental kind of foundational structure with neighborhoods where we have opportunities for small groups and small locations to really work together to accomplish those things in our smaller areas that we all need. Our communities are so diverse, and we're so lucky to have people who treat working with these small communities as a calling. I mean, certainly Andrew and Diana can tell you they're not being overpaid, okay? And they're not being treated the way they should be for what they're actually accomplishing on the street. And so we have the foundation in our city to get into all of the problems that we face at a community level. What we need to do is combine those community structures with our city government and even our state and county governments so that we have the proper funding, we have the proper resources, and we all have the proper priorities where we put people first and the needs of the people and the residents and even the small business owners at a premium so that all of our communities, no matter where you're from, no matter what zip code you call home, you can feel you have every option and every opportunity to achieve your highest level of success, your highest degree and potential, that if you have an idea for a business, you can open it up and be successful. If you want higher education, resources and opportunities are there for you to achieve that. Whatever you want to accomplish in the city of Minneapolis, it is our job as a city government to work to make sure that happens for everyone. That's what I'm trying to accomplish as the next city council person in Ward 9.
I got several questions. Thank you for that summary again, that reintroduction. But talk about the Moore family. You're born and raised here. Tell me about your lineage. Who are the Moores?
Sure.
That bring you on both sides of your family.
Yeah. Well, I'm the single son of a single mom. I'm actually one of those kids. It's not totally unique or rare, but I'm one of those kids who has absolutely no clue who his father was. As far as anybody's concerned, I just showed up in my mom's stomach one day, and there's been no story, no backstory, no front story, no explanation, and no excuse.
Wow.
And so I'm the son of a single mom, and she worked really hard to educate herself. She ended up getting her master's degree. She worked for almost 40 years for the county, for Hennepin County, as a budget analyst. She provided a great childhood for me by working hard and instilling in me the value of a hard work ethic. That meant she was gone a lot of the time. That meant I was left to some of the programs and city resources that we used to have a lot of, that we don't have as much of anymore. But Latchkey, the Park and Rec Sports, the YMCA programs, the Pillsbury House programs, Boys and Girls Club, the Boy Scouts, all the different options and choices that were out there for a little kid who could gain identity and self-confidence by joining up with these groups that were positive and uplifting and really pushing you to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, whether it's sports, arts, crafts. I used to go to camp from the day school ended until the day school started. I'd go to one boys club camp, then off to the Boy Scouts camp, then over to the Big Brothers camp, then over to the Pillsbury House camp, and just nonstop, because my mom had nothing to do, had no way to take care of me during those days. So
the plan was keep you in camp.
That's right. That's right. And I can't tell you
how we did it. Yeah.
I can't tell you how important that is. I think I'm 52 years old now, and I think about those days and times when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and how formulative, those impactful, those camps and those counselors were. People just like Andrew and Diana, who had a mission, a calling to just help people, and they weren't getting overpaid. Boy, back in the 70s, they were probably getting $300 or $500 for the entire summer to work there. But they cared about kids, and they cared about inner city kids, and they cared about kids that had never seen a horse before, or didn't have the opportunity to learn how to swim on their own, or row a boat, or go fish. They just, the kind of things that you learn at these kind of outlets is just, it's phenomenal. And it's incredible how impactful it has been on my life. And so when I think about what's missing for today's youth and why we have this incredible rise in street crime and gun violence, I don't see any. It's obvious to me. There is a total disconnect right now between the options that kids have and the opportunities that they have that are fun and enjoyable and meaningful and impactful and will influence them throughout their lives. We used to have programs at the library. We'd go to watch film strips. That's how old I am. We'd watch movies on film strip. And you could get dropped off at the library and be there for hours. You could be there all day. And it was just a very, very important part of my growing up. And it's the type of programming, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but it's the type of programming that we need to make sure is fully funded. And we have all the resources targeting these options for kids today, if we're ever going to make the changes that we need that are going to really impact our problems, our crisis level problems that we have in terms of crime, in terms of problematic youth violence, and interrupting that cycle of poverty and trouble.
So you're telling me you can ride a horse?
Oh, yeah.
You can row a boat?
Oh, yeah.
And you can swim?
Everything.
And obviously you can read at the library, right?
Everything, Al. The lessons that you learn specifically, there was a Boys and Girls Club camp. Back then we called it the Boys Club, but now it's Boys Girls Club. There's a Boys Club camp in Mound, Minnesota, where they put you through a rigorous training session on every rope tying, fishing, conservation in nature, swimming, archery. Back then we had riflery. You could go to the Boys Club camp and shoot a rifle. And not that that's exciting, but that's just something that we just have lost our ability to connect with our youth today because we just don't have that kind of programming anymore. And the options and opportunities that we used to have when I was a kid are precisely what we need to re-engage all these at-risk youth who are so likely and so they make up that demographic that is the problematic likelihood of turning to street crime or bad decisions or just wayward behavior. We can stop that. We can deal with that. There are answers to these problems. We just have to focus on it. We have to prioritize it. We need people that have experience, that understand it, and know how to implement these type of programs into our structure and move forward. We can do a private-public partnerships. We can bring in the right programs and the right programmers, the nonprofits, the charities, the foundations, the organizations where this is their mission, and we can make this a high priority for our city. Once again,
absent that, you have a group of young people that grow up thinking that food is actually made at the corner store, that if they can't buy it in a plastic bag, it doesn't exist, right? No connection between the idea that we live in a state that's called the land of 10,000 lakes, where fishing can be more than a sport. It can be a source of sustenance, right? Of the daily or twice or three times weekly meal or daily meal, if you know how to do it. But if we have failed to engage a segment of young people around those life skills, then you have allowed the emergence of a sector that has a very myopic and narrow and, by definition, pessimistic view of the world. And these are the children that walk around saying, I don't think I'm going to live till I'm 20. I'll be dead before I'm 18. And if you have that certainty in your mind as a child, because what you see around you in your immediate environment limits you to thinking that your portion of all this bounty is the remnant, right? The leftover and the unimportant, it assigns you a value of unimportance as well. And therein lies frustration and the search for finding other ways, right, to be recognized, gang activity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about your comments reminded me of that observation that I made as a journalist, just looking at, how kids and young people would rationalize their being on the street, doing the street hustle. I heard people say, this is back at Lucille's Kitchen, Diana. Some people you and I know would say, well, I'm selling drugs because I got to make it. I got to hustle, and nobody's going to give me a job, and nobody excuses, right? But they use this narrative to justify their choice to pursue the underworld and to not make a bid for public, above board and responsible, transparent life building that most people go through day by day. So some people walk away. Tell me more about your mom's side then. Did you know your grandparents, and do you have connections with that lineage?
Well, my mom is white, and having a child of color kind of put her on the outs with her old school family. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't, her father died when I was just a little kid. Mm-hmm. He had a stroke. He was a 3-pack-a-day Lucky Strike smoker, so he wasn't long for this world no matter what had happened. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was a great woman. I was lucky to have a long relationship with her. The women in my mother's family lived to be about 100 years old, so you get a lot of opportunity to meet them and know them and receive the benefits of their experience. Mm-hmm. But it's always been, she moved to Minnesota because at that time Minneapolis was a place of progress and progressive thinking. It was a place of high ideals. She's a Peace Corps volunteer. She spent 3 years in a
your grandma, your mom,
my mother.
Your mother is Peace Corps.
My mother, in the early 60s, you know, she graduated summa cum laude from the University of Detroit. And rather than turn that into a great career for herself, she immediately went to this little village in Africa and spent 3 years teaching English to people in Ethiopia. And so when she came back, she was looking for a place in America that really reflected her more wider viewpoint and perspective, and a place that was more liberal and tolerant and valued equality and valued inclusion and diversity. So that's why she ended up in Minneapolis very specifically, because she had done her research and she heard great things about the city of Minneapolis. And in the mid 60s, Minneapolis was highly progressive. And we had a vision of what our city could be that really mattered to people like her. She started the concept of Head Start, which is now a national program. She worked for years in accessible daycare and affordable daycare options for preschool kids. So, you know, eventually she ended up working for the city of Minneapolis and then the county, because she's just a great mind in terms of economic and sociological economy. That's her master's degree.
What's your mom's name? What's her name?
Kathleen Moore.
Kathleen Moore. Okay. Let's see if I knew her or came
Well,
across her.
a lot of people do, because she spent, like I said, she spent 40 years on the 10th floor of the Hennepin County Government Center, really kind of relegating all the different budgetary issues that, you know, our county oversees. That's welfare, that's housing projects, that's food stamps. It's all these different programs that have come and gone over the last 40, 50 plus years. But getting back to what you said, Al, I think you're right on target with the change that our young generation has seen in terms of the images that they have in front of them for what they can become have changed over time. Back in the 60s and 70s, we had extremely positive images that we could relate to that maybe drove us to achieve even more than, even higher than what we saw other people doing. And now there's this comfort level that young people have where they can just sit back and relax and take the easy road, what they think is the easy road, what they perceive to be the short money. And as we all know, that there's no future there. We all know that. Those are the
trick. It's the trick. So I'm gonna stay on your family for a second. So your grandma and the other people in that line, where are they from?
Pennsylvania. My grandmother's my grandmother's family settled in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania Dutch, basically. Okay. And they've all got big families. The only person that didn't have a lot of kids was my grandmother. She came from a group of 7, and everybody, all the other 6 had big families, 5, 6 kids each. But my grandmother only had 2, and my mother only had 1. And now I've only got 1. It's unlikely that I'm going to have another. So we're the kind of not the black sheep, but we're the thinning side of the family. The other side of the family in Pennsylvania, wow. I mean, when they have a family reunion, there's hundreds of people that show up. When we have a family reunion, it's just me and my mom.
Well, okay, so like they're Dutch Pennsylvanians, right? So Holland, right, is the home country. Are you connected to Holland in any way?
Yeah, actually Austria. They go back to Austria. So yeah, kind of the village where Albert Einstein is from. So maybe there's some connection very, very far back.
Have you been there?
No, I've never been to any country in Europe outside of England. I had the opportunity to go to England one time, but other than that, I've never been to Europe, the continent of Europe. I've done a lot of traveling, but never to Europe.
And so does the question of genealogy work on you in any way or not?
You know, it's funny that you ask that. What I tell people is this, and this is the God's truth. I don't want to know very specifically where I'm from and what my background is, especially on my father's side. Clearly, he was not white. But what happens when I meet people, whether they're from the Dominican Republic, from Cuba, from Sri Lanka, from any country in Africa, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Somalia, Kenya, people want to adopt me. They say, Mickey, I think you're from Somalia. Mickey, I think you must be from Ethiopia. Mickey, you must be from Botswana. Mickey, I know your face. You must be from Bolivia, the Dominican Republic. You must be from Brazil. They all want me to be, even from places that don't make any sense. They always want me to be from their country. And I love the idea. Even, people say that when I visit indigenous tribes around America, they said, I think you might be Blackfoot, my friend. So the option and the idea that I might be from any of these countries and from any of these cultures, I like to leave that open because it's totally possible. I might be a part of the Somali community. I very well may be part of the Ethiopian community. I very well may be an indigenous American. That's totally possible. And I love to leave that open as a possibility rather than find out definitively exactly where I'm from. So I purposely choose not to dig into that too deeply so that I can leave that door open to all cultures and all communities as being a part of their operation.
Very interesting. That's a great take. Let me go to Brother Tech, and I'll have you start at the same point and come back out the other way, Tech. And if you don't mind, I love stories. I love people's personal stories, and I think I learned more about you just in telling the story you just told me, Mickey. It's, wonderful story, and thank you for sharing that. And so I'm going to start with Tekken, because Tekken, I know that you also are adopted, right?
Yep.
And was it not also, but you are adopted. You've told us that before, but you are from Colombia, born in Colombia, and came to Minnesota. And I wonder how much you know of your genealogy in Colombia before you came to North America, to this country.
Wow. It's so interesting that, when Mickey's talking about his, his bio and whatnot, and it's so similar in many ways to mine. So I was abandoned on the street in my country. And back then in Colombia, when poorer families would come into poor neighborhoods, the culture was that you would build, you kind of attach yourself onto someone else's house. You would connect to their water, to their electricity, but you would have no contact between families. And so the story is that when I was picked up by the police and brought, he asked, whose child is this? And people in the neighborhood said that I belonged to this family, but they had left. Supposedly, I have maybe four or five actual blood siblings. One of my parents was Black and the other one was something else. Similar to Mickey, I can kind of blend. And so I spent about a year in the orphanage, Casa, which if people who are into adoption in Colombia would know Casa. And then I was adopted by a first generation American family here in Minnesota. First generation meaning that, and this is important, so many white families in Minnesota are first or second generation. The story that I had always known was that my grandfather was the last born in Sweden in 1899. And my maternal grandfather was the first born in New York City in a tenement in the early 1900s. I get confused exactly when it was, but he had come from Norway. And so on that side, the Norwegian and Welsh Canadian side, teachers, masons, very kind of that type of people who are from Bemidji in Minnesota. If you know Minnesota, kind of regional cultures, that will tell you a lot that they were from Bemidji. And then my father was born in Isanti, humble Swedish farmers. And that's the family that I was adopted into. I, went to school, faced a lot of struggles, similar to what Mickey was saying. If we roll back 40 some years, it was a different Minnesota. I want to break there and say that that's one of my biggest concerns, is that I feel we are regressing. And so, the advancements, the liberal, progressive Festival of Nations advancements that we'd made in my lifetime, I feel are being kind of brushed away. I graduated from high school and left within 2 weeks. The father of their children, who's actually here right now, he and I started Vision Models, which became Vision Management Group, also in 1996. We were in business for 22 years. It was an amazing run where we created economic opportunities for Minnesotans and people from, as far away as Indiana, economic opportunities for what we called the new All-Americans, meaning that, in Minnesota, if I look at my cousins, they're all blonde and blue with, blonde or brunette hair. And that was in Minnesota considered All-American. When we started Vision, we were presenting all types of Minnesotans, which really changed the dynamic of our corporate clients, where they started to open up and realize that they had to not only present a more diverse, marketing scheme, but that they were also speaking to a new consumer base here in Minnesota. And so, we did that. In 2009, we had the International Face of Calvin Klein, Men's Campaign Global. I've had people walk for, Versace, Yves Saint Laurent, as well as, your shows that used to happen downtown for Dayton's, which then became Marshall Fields. And so we really, I think, busted down the walls of exclusion in Minneapolis when it came to model and talent activities in this town. And I'm very proud to say that Nathan and I ended up in Nathan, what was the name of the book? The Scott Collection, I think it's called, which is a book of historic African Americans of Minnesota. And it was coming from another country, being raised here, it was a huge honor and something that I was very proud to bring back to my family and say, hey, you didn't bring me up here for nothing. But again, creating economic opportunities for specifically our youth, but all the way up into the ages is what we did, and did it quite successfully. And so, similar to Mickey, I bring that business sense, that actual where I was expected to create results, not just for my corporate clients, but for the families, the babies, the children, the young adults that we represented. If I didn't create results, I had no business. If I had no business, I made no money. I couldn't raise taxes or something like that and pay myself more in those tough times. And that's the kind of perspective that I think needs to be brought to City Hall, especially as we start climbing out of the hole that has been these last 2 years of George Floyd and the tsunami, as well as COVID-19 and the economic depression that we're facing. I'm sure Al and Diana and Clarence, as well as Mickey, you had heard that some years ago, we were told that the median income of the average African-American family would be zero. And, most of us are like, well, how could that be? And even if that is, it's going to be, off in the distance. Well, it's now. And so building upon what Mickey was saying, creating economic avenues. You were talking also about what you had to do to gain ownership of Insight. For something so important as Insight News, had I been, or had Mickey maybe been in government, we would have wanted to partner with you. Mm-hmm. Whether that means that we had funding available to see small local businesses, specifically BIPOC businesses or women-owned businesses, okay? Or it's our job to connect you to those lenders that the city knows are open to growing economic viability for all Twin Cities. And so, so that's a little bit about what I did, you can look at our Instagram at Vision MPLS. I've never been someone who really bragged about it, but I know Mickey's campaign manager kind of read me a new one when I said we had a glorious career, but we did. I think, what was it, the first or second time that I went to New York Fashion Week, I was, there was one row in between me and the Vogue team. That says a lot about my position in the American fashion network and what we were able to do from the city of Minneapolis. The last thing I'll say is that creating those economic opportunities is what we mastered. Butterfly and Mo Gulapon, Andy Rempel, Mickey Schneider, the list goes on of people who now are the bosses of American fashion globally, who represent many of our supermodels currently, and are masters of the industry, whether in New York or Los Angeles. And so I'm proud to be the father of a small business empire that started out of an apartment, I think it was 1402 Spruce here in Loring Park, and that really changed people's perceptions about beauty, but also who was an American and who had the benefit of being keyed into that monetary world that is there in the Twin Cities when it came to advertising.
The book you reference is by Walter Scott. Walter Scott created, I think, a series of 3, maybe 4 profiles of earlier ones were called the Minneapolis Negro Profile. Then the subsequent ones were called the Black Profile, and they were wonderful collections and reflections of accomplishment across a variety of disciplines and fields, from community to corporate, from religion to culture and art. And so, yeah, if you were in that, says something, and congratulations. And it's good to learn about your world and your role in the fashion industry. I want to learn more about that. Maybe as time goes by, we can talk about where we are now in the world of fashion and the business. Do you
remember years ago when we still had Dayton's? There was a famous cover of a black girl, very dark, with shaved head in swimwear, and it was called Rock the Boat. Okay. And that was our model, and that was the first time that they had put someone like that on the cover of Dayton's Today, and they actually won an advertising award for that. And so that just kind of says,
was that model? Was that an African American model or African model?
She was an African and Liberian model. Okay. But who, through...
I remember the cover. I remember that.
Yeah. Yep, she came. Her name was Cherich Alam. And interestingly enough, after she transitioned from modeling, she ran our company finances for about 15 years or so. So that just tells you how you build people. Mm-hmm. And again, as Mickey was saying, I do believe, as he does, that that's part of the role of local government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mickey, you mentioned that you were jailed by the state of Minnesota for having the audacity to create and operate an hair braiding business. I'm presuming the issue was you were not licensed as a cosmetologist, and therefore you violated their ordinances. Actually, and it was a new ordinance, or an ordinance that might or might not have fit what you were doing. Tell me about that.
Well, before the braid factory opened, we worked for almost 15 months to try to create a system whereby we could be legitimate and licensed and meet any whatever regulations that they had. But the bottom line, or the underlying truth, is that there was literally zero overlap between the regulations and guidelines regarding cosmetology and anything that we did in terms of hair braiding. There just was there's no cover there. There was no reason why somebody who was an exclusive hair braider would ever need to have a cosmetology license or follow through the regulations required to fall under that kind of level of guidance. And ultimately, when we did have this organization called the Institute of Justice come to Minnesota, establish an office here, and work to change the minds and change the legislation at a state level, everybody in the legislature finally agreed, and we finally solved this problem legislatively. But it took an organization with the power and the resources of the Institute of Justice to be able to accomplish that. I just simply didn't have the resources or the power or the partnership within our government structure to get people to understand what I was saying. I was operating out there like a kite in the wind, just kind of being blown by the higher authorities and more, when a district court judge issues you a cease and desist order,
Mm-hmm.
it is very difficult to not abide by that. If you don't abide by that, you are inherently breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get a temporary restraining order or one of these cease and desist orders, you're at the end of your ability to argue with that kind of level of government. You have to have somebody on your side that can get up there, and that's very, very expensive. If I would have had to pay the people at the Institute of Justice to do what they did over the course of, I think they argued for 5 years, we're talking about millions of dollars of legal fees. That's just not something that a small business, especially not a small business that is a Black-owned, Black-oriented business, is ever going to be able to muster.
So I'm imagining you must have been wondering how come this big industry was picking on little Mickey, because you were doing something that wasn't on their radar, that wasn't a direct threat to their business model. Maybe it was in the long run if people became more aware of what their options were and their cultural proclivity. But at its surface and at the time, you were not doing perms, right? And
No,
doing,
nothing like that.
Cosmetology or consulting like that. So, and then all of a sudden, the hand of the law comes down on you, probably at the suggestion of the industry.
Oh, yeah.
Looked at you and said, "Shut him down because he's a threat to our business, and we all have paid our dues here, and he's not a member of our club, and we don't want him in the club because he's not doing what we do, but he's doing that, so shut him down." And you probably said, you guys are making too big of a deal out of this. I'm just hustling, trying to make my day-to-day. And even if you want to send me a cease and desist, what does that really mean? I got to keep braiding hair. And then somebody said, "Oh, he doesn't believe fat meat is greasy. Pick him up and lock him up." Is that how it went down?
It was a lot of that, Al. And I'll tell you that on my end, what was even more concerning to me was the fact that when I opened the Braid Factory, we opened up as a professional luxury hair braiding salon. It was no expense was too much. We had wall-to-wall carpeting. We had floor-to-ceiling mirrors. We had high levels because we were trying to do something different. We were trying to step out of that porch mentality, that back of the supply room mentality that we had been relegated to in the past. And people that came to the earliest editions of the Braid Factory will tell you.
Therefore, you were a threat.
We had a very high level
in your
of growth.
neighborhood across the tracks. You've been okay.
That's part of it. That's absolutely part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And what was really disturbing is that no matter who I reached out to, whether they were at the city level, the county level, the state level, or wherever, people refuse to see the viability of the business itself, which is really troubling because right now, hair braiding is a multi-million-dollar a year business within the Twin Cities. There are 45 or 50, I sometimes lose count, natural hair braiding salons that employ up to maybe 400 or 500 people gainfully employed. These are, if anybody knows about getting their hair braided, it's a long process. It's service oriented. It's expensive. It's not as expensive as it used to be when we were the only people doing it because for a variety of reasons, costs have gone down. Efficiency.
Let me interrupt you. So was hair braiding invented by Bo Derek?
Oh, no. Hair braiding is an African cultural art.
And I'm being very facetious, obviously, but that's back when the film came out, right? And all of a sudden, the world discovered braids.
Yeah.
And once again, they appropriated the culture.
Yeah, in a manner of speaking.
Elvis Presley and rock and roll said they invented it.
In a manner of speaking, things like that often happen to the Black culture. But if you go inside the culture itself, even back in the 60s and 70s, there was a culture of hair braiding going on within our country, but it was being reduced and being relegated to such a back of the bus style situation that it just had trouble gaining footing, especially in a city so predominantly white like Minneapolis, like Minnesota. It had trouble gaining footing in terms of being a legitimate industry. And luckily that's changed now, but it's just sad to note that a $1 million industry. There's $1 billion throughout the country, but in the city of Minneapolis, multi-million dollar industry could be suppressed. And this is an industry that targets the economic development to the community that needs it the most, the community that has been so historically underserved. And the fact that we have to fight so hard for something that we have a right to is a really disturbing perversion of our priorities. And that's why we need people with more experience, people that have a history of going through difficult struggles. We need people in our city government that have seen both sides of this story and know how to advocate for what is right.
And it's also, I think, a commentary on the fact that there was a lack of cultural understanding, one, but then also, two, a historic and systemic aversion to BIPOC economic advancement in Minneapolis, right? And we've all faced that. And you know, anyone who is of color who has owned a business here has their own horror stories of dealing with the powers that be. And so that is something that also it transcends race in this town, where we know that city government does not favor, when you know the pen hits the paper, local small business. You know, you can talk to almost anyone in mom and pop local small business, and they say they have had, you know, a hellish time dealing with this or that ordinance, this or that inspection, or whatnot. Similar to Mickey, when I transferred vision into more of an art gallery, where, you know, I was showing contemporary inner city artists and serving my clientele champagne in glass. And all of a sudden I had the police on me and they were trying to shut it down and this and that. I had to go to the city. Interestingly enough, they had a dossier on me that basically tried to link me to all crime in the, you know, mile radius of where I was at, which was just preposterous. And, you know, unfortunately, the executive director of our neighborhood assisted in that until I kind of got in there and let her know who I was and, you know, kind of joined the group. But this is something that has prohibited BIPOC people in Minneapolis from stepping out on their own and starting their own small business and creating their own pathway to generational wealth. And this is something that I'm committed to reversing. You know, I understand those concerns. I've been through media, I've been through this, I've been through that, and still had to roll up my own sleeves and make it happen for 22 years. And so I understand what other burgeoning entrepreneurs in Minneapolis need, and understand that if we're going to be successful and create what I call the second Minneapolis miracle, we've got to bring those people in, and we've got to help them succeed.
We're out of time. This has been a rich, and wonderful conversation. Again, I love the personal stories and how you both were able to weave the personal story into commentary on the condition, the history, and into a statement about the promise and the potential of building community. I thank you both for being here. I thank you for your service as entrepreneurs and leaders in community and in culture. And I thank you for your courage in stepping forward, seeking the endorsement of the residents of your ward as you run for city council in 9th Ward, Mickey Moore, and 7th Ward, Tikin Zia Aida. Diana, thank you. Andrew, thank you. Brother Clarence, thank you. We'll see you all later, tomorrow again at 1 o'clock. And then Thursday morning, right? For the, you mentioned it at the first part of the program, Diana. Or
the Hawthorne Huddle, 7:30. You can either
Thursday,
7:30. You can text Andrew, and he'll make sure that you get a link to the show. How about that?
Yep. Shoot me an email.
And tomorrow is National Night Out as well, right?
Yes, tomorrow's National Night Out.
Great opportunity to talk to neighbors, talk about safety, talk about economic development, all of that tomorrow night.
There we go. We'll see you next time, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.